Welcome back. Second week of virtual learning, second week of Fantastic Five. We are still live in the man cave. Thank you for watching. Hopefully last week you got a chance to see exactly what we talked about. So wherever you started, hopefully we saw that climb all the way up until we got to your quiz on Friday. And the ultimate goal was we wanted to get a 5. If not, hopefully you finished higher than where you started. And you're going to get the same chance to do that again this week. It is Tuesday. It is April 7th, meaning you have had the chance to do yesterday's Fantastic Five. No matter what the number was, if you're watching, that's a good thing. That means you may have had a question you wanted to get answered, or you might just want to see a different way to solve it. Either way, I appreciate you watching. Your teachers appreciate you watching. So it's going to be a little bit of a short week. You'll have today's Fantastic Five, and then you'll have one on Wednesday and Thursday. So really your quiz is going to be on Thursday. So you should be watching this before you do your second attempt at your Fantastic Five. But hopefully this will kind of put you in the right direction. I'm going to throw a little curveball in here today. And for the rest of the week and for the rest of however long we're doing this, for every Fantastic Five video that I make, I'm going to have a special guest. Sometimes it'll be a student. Sometimes it'll be a teacher. Sometimes it might be a parent. And that person could be you. If that is something you are interested in today, I've got Abby Piner, who is a 4th grader in my class, who you will see solve a question on here. And if that's something you're interested in, I'd love to have you reach out to me and we can set it up. So we'll cut to that in the middle. But for now, we're going to go ahead and get started here with our Fantastic Five. If I can find it. Nope. Here we go. Okay, so your Fan 5 from yesterday started with number 1. There are 64 children watching Paddington on Nick Jr. 5/8 of them start to cry because they want to watch Bubble Guppies. How many children started to cry? So if you're in my class, you probably instantly saw a picture in your head. If you're in somebody else's class, you may not have seen it this way. You may have said, ooh, I know how to multiply a whole number times a fraction to figure that out. That would work every time. But when it comes to these numbers and they're getting a little bit bigger, there's a picture that I draw every time for whenever I have to find the fraction of a whole number. So I'll give you an idea what that looks like. If I have 64 children and I wanted to show that a certain way, I would always just draw a box and put my 64 kids in the middle, just like that. Now it says 5/8 of them are crying, meaning I need to split this picture into 8ths. And I'll do that as best I can. We're going to imagine that these are even. Once I've taken my 64 kids, split them into 8ths, right underneath that picture, I'm going to write an equation that matches that. So if I'm saying that out loud, I just took 64 and split it into 8ths. I would write 64 divided by 8 equals, and then you just got to know the math. If you know your multiplication, you know 64 divided by 8 is 8. If you didn't know that, you might have to list some multiples. You might have to do some long division. But you get 64 divided by 8, and your answer there is 8. That does not mean that the answer to the question is 8. It depends what the question's asking. But what that 8 represents is how many kids are in each of those 8 sections. So I'd write an 8 above all of those. I apologize if you can hear my 2-year-old downstairs with my wife. He's watching Paw Patrol and absolutely losing his mind. Okay, now that I've got this far, here's where I really got to go back and look at the question. I want to know how many kids were crying. And it said 5/8 of them were crying. So I will look at 5 of those 8s. And I even tell my kids to write down the word cry. These kids right here, happy. And I'm sure those kids are lovely, but we don't care about the happy kids for this question. We want the tears. So to figure out how many kids that is, I could go 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8, repeated addition, same thing as multiplication, probably a little bit easier in this case to go 8 times 5. And again, multiplication makes everything that you do easier if you know your facts. 8 times 5 would give you 40, which is D. So look, maybe the first time you've seen it solved like that, give that one a shot. I really like that picture because once you see those reflexes, I hope the camera got that. Quick like a cat. Once you get into numbers like, hey, there's 120 kids watching, I love that picture for those types of numbers. So keep that picture in mind. And if you didn't do it that way and you got it right, keep doing it. If it works, it works. It is not my way or the highway. All right, moving on. Looking at number 2, this one right here is going to tell me who paid attention last week. Because last week you talked about triangles. You can name it by its angles. You can name it by its sides. And some of you should be pretty familiar with it from just seeing it in Fan 5 in the past. So I would have first just picked one, kind of like the question with multiples and factors. I just started with multiples. For this one, I would just start with the angles. All right, if I look at all those angles, 60, 60, 60. All of those are less than 90, meaning all of those are acute. If you have 3 acute angles, you have an acute triangle. So if I looked at my answer choices, I could go ahead and eliminate A, because there is no right angle up there. B, C, and D, I can still consider those because they all say acute. Now I'll look at the second part of the question. I look at the sides. These lines here, very important. That means that all 3 of those sides are equal. If you have 3 equal sides, that means you have an equilateral triangle, which would give you C. So with geometry, guys, anybody, I'm talking anybody can do geometry because it really just comes down to memorizing some vocabulary, learning some attributes. If you just take the time to study what these words mean, you can apply them to these questions. There's not a whole lot of math involved, numbers-wise. If you know what this stuff means or you know attributes of a shape, geometry can be pretty easy. But for some reason, every year, 4th grade as a whole struggles with geometry. So you're going to have to name a triangle every single day. It might not hurt to go back and look at those slides from last week to kind of beef up your vocabulary or review if you have to. All right, so we're moving on to number 3. I'm going to go ahead and cut to my interview with Abby Piner. Like I said, if you're interested in doing this, let me know. But let's go ahead and cut to that. She did an awesome job. All right, so we've got our special guest. We've got Abby Piner. Abby, how are you doing?
Good.
Good. All right, so I'm going to have you do some math for me in just a second. But first, I'm going to ask you a few questions. And the first question I'm going to ask is, what has been your favorite part about being home so far?
That I get to sleep in late.
That is nice. So sleeping in late, like what time do you wake up?
I usually wake up at 6, but I stay in my bed.
Okay, well, I guess that's not too bad then. Besides your broken collarbone, what's been your least favorite part about being home?
I can't play because of it.
Yeah, that's kind of a bummer. Yeah, that's tough. And then last question, are you doing anything special at home to keep you organized, or are your parents kind of helping you with that?
My parents are helping me.
Good. All right. It's good to have a little routine in your life. All right. So I'm going to get this pulled up. Abby, can you see this question, the alligator question? Okay, so I'm going to read it, and then I'm just going to have you talk me through it, and I'm going to write kind of as you talk. So the question says, the body of an alligator measures 7 2/3 feet long, and the tail is 4 2/3 feet long. What is the total length of the alligator? So Abby, I'm going to let you kind of talk me through this, and whatever you say, I'm going to write up on the screen.
So you'll do 7 2/3 plus 4 2/3.
All right. Kind of sloppy, but all right. So where would you start?
I would add the whole numbers first, and that the whole numbers would give you 11.
All right. And what's next?
2/3 plus 2/3 is 4/3.
All right.
Add 2/3. But then you would circle the 11 because 4/3 is an improper fraction. And
Okay.
And then you would change 4. And then you would do 3 divided by 4, which would give you 1 1/3. And then you would add that to 11.
Good. So you did 4 divided by 3, and you knew that 3 went into 4 one whole time, and you got 1, and your remainder was 1, which became your numerator, and then you got 1 1/3. And then what was the last thing you said to do?
Add it with 11.
Good, and that's why you circled it. And if you look at B, 1 1/3 is an answer choice. So if anybody forgot to add that whole number, they might have chose it. So if I did add those together, what would my answer have been, Abby?
12 1/3.
12 1/3. Very good job. So you are my first Fantastic Five guest, and you did a very good job. So thank you very much for helping me out. Before I let you go, is there anything you want to say to the thousands of people? It's probably only like 20, but the people watching at home, is there anything you want to say?
No, sir.
All right, well, Abby, thank you very much. Enjoy your work, your virtual learning, and I hope your collarbone heals quickly. All right, see ya.
Bye.
All right, a little awkward silence there, no big deal. Abby did an awesome job. If you are sitting at home watching this and you're thinking, I'd like to help Mr. Huber with a Fantastic Five question, let me know. Shoot me a message on here. I don't know how to do that. Send me an email, send your teacher an email, but I'd love to get somebody on here. I'm going to try to get somebody to come on and solve a question every day. So if you can come on here and do just as good as Abby just did, I'd be more than happy to have you. Abby, you are the bomb. You might not be the best at riding the bike, or no, I think you get slung off the handlebars. I don't know. Get well soon. Thank you for joining me. All right, we are moving on to number 4. It says Laura ran on Monday and Tuesday. She ran 9 4/10 miles on Monday and 4 2/10 miles on Tuesday. How much farther did she run on Monday than Tuesday? I've been doing a lot of these videos, so I can't remember if those keywords were in last week's Fan 5 or if they were in that 10-day packet from Pitt County Schools. Either way, when you saw how much farther, you should automatically know I've got to be subtracting here. So let me get my whiteboard pulled up. We can do a little bit of math here. And look, you can write it exactly how it has it. Even though when you look at your answer choices, some are in fraction form, some are in decimals, I can just go ahead and write 9 4/10 minus 4 2/10. Always make sure those decimals line up, and then look to the right of the decimal. Make sure you got something looking the same. If one's in hundredths and one's in tenths, you can fix that. But in this case, they're both tenths, so we're good. So 4 minus 2 gives me 2. Drop that decimal down there at the bottom. 9 minus 4 is 5. So that right there gives us 5 2/10. Of course, the EOG or a test you might take is not going to make it that easy. If you look at your answer choices, none of those say 5.2, 5 2/10. My biggest fear would be that somebody would pick C just because it looks close to it. Because 5 2/10 It's a pretty big difference between that and 5 and 200ths. If there's two numbers after the decimal, that's hundredths, not tenths. So this is where you kind of have to go through your mental checklist and figure out what you can do, because you know you did that math perfect. Guys, you can rewrite that 3 other ways. You can write it one more way as a decimal just by adding a 0. I've got it in tenths. I could also show it in hundredths. Then I could check back in my answer choices, but that's not up there either. Then I could take those decimals and I could rewrite those as fractions. I could take 5 and 2/10 and write it exactly how it sounds. It's almost like word form when you're doing place value. And then if I looked, 5 and 2/10, also not an answer choice, but I can still write it one more way, 5 and 20/100ths. All I'd have to do, go back, look at my answer choices, and A, 5 and 20/100ths would be sitting right there, looking me right in the eye. So if you know for a fact you're doing really good math, don't panic and choose the answer choice that looks close. Mental checklist. Think about what you can do a little bit differently. Do it and see if you can find it. Now, if you subtracted wrong, obviously you did something wrong. You got to go back to the start, but don't panic and choose one that's close. A lot of the time that just doesn't work for you. All right, I really like this question. And number 5, I'm telling you, this one's going to be like this all week. You're going to get it right today. You're going to miss it tomorrow. You're going to miss it the next day. You'll get it right the next day. If you don't read this question and draw this picture, the box method, the area model, whatever your teacher calls it, if you don't draw this picture, it's going to make it so much harder. All right, so there are twice as many tigers as there are lions at the cat park. If there are 16 lions, how many total tigers and lions are there? So that word twice, very important. If your mom or your dad or your grandma or whoever is at your house tells you to do something twice, they told you 2 times. And guys, twice as many or 2 times as many instantly in my brain makes me think box method. Multiplicative comparisons. I've got 2 things that I'm comparing here. I'm going to pull them out and I'm going to draw some boxes. All right, so let's go whiteboard. All right, the 2 things that I'm comparing, tigers and lions. So I can go T for tiger, maybe. Now let's get a color we can actually see here. T for tiger, L for lion. All right, and then the important part is getting your picture correctly, or getting your picture correct. So let me go back to my question. It says there are twice as many tigers as lions, meaning there are more tigers than lions. Because if I have twice as much money as you, I've got more, right? So if there are 2 times as many tigers, that means the tigers are going to get 2 boxes. And that lion automatically gets 1. Now, once you get the boxes down, I always tell my kids to go back to the question. Look at what it's asking. Is it asking about the tigers? Is it asking about the lions? Or is it asking about both? Well, guys, in this case, it wants to know the total between both tigers and lions. So I always tell them to put a star. I've got to know these 2 together. Don't just give me one of them. Then all you got to do is plug in the information that it gives you. And the question, it says there's 16 lines. Well, guys, there's 16. If the box is for lions, if the lions has 1 box, you just put the 16 lines in that 1 box. And if there's 16 in that box, then you got 16 up here and 16 right there as well. Then there's a couple of different ways you can do it here. If you wanted to, you could say, okay, I can go 16 times here, or 16 times 2, and get 32, and then add it to my 16 and get 48. To me, if I knew I needed all of those boxes, I would say, well, I see the number 16 3 times. I would probably stack them, multiply them. 3 times 6 is 18. 8 stays, 1 goes. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 more is 4, and you still get 48. Some of you might want to go 16 plus 16 plus 16. Doesn't matter to me. As long as you do the math correctly, all 3 of those ways would work. I think the most commonly picked answer that would be incorrect here. I bet you a lot of people who missed it chose 32 when the answer should have been 48, because that means they did perfect math, but they didn't read the question. That question doesn't just say, hey, how many tigers you got here? That's got to go tigers and lions. That's why that star is super, super important. All right, so you are about to start your second Fantastic Five. Guys, look, the way I see it, besides this schoolwork, you've got nothing to do today. If you're feeling kind of iffy on one of these questions, guys, scroll backwards, watch the question again if you need to. Don't do that Fantastic Five until you feel ready. Because I think, seeing them done before you do them on your own is really helpful. And it's only the second chance you've had to do them. So I'm not expecting people to go from a 1 to a 5. But I tell my kids all the time, if you've seen it before, we shouldn't expect to move backwards. Remember, it's a steady climb to the top by Thursday to try to get to the top. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope something in this stood out that helps you. Or maybe you just saw something new that you want to try. Go for it. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.